Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, we ask that you kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them on mute. Thank you.
Kerachem Abba Banim, Richam Adonai Yirayav. We learn in the book of Psalms. As a parent has compassion for her children, so may Adonai our God have compassion for all the family and friends, both here with us today in the sanctuary and also joining us on the live stream, as we come together to remember Deena Whitman. God knows how we are fashioned, God remembers that we are dust. Our days are like grass, we flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over us and we are no more. But we trust that God's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children endures age after age, unchanging. We begin our service by reciting Psalms, thus linking Deena's life to our ancient tradition, to the Jewish people, and to the eternity of God.
Shir Hamalot Esainai Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Esainai Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri meim Adonai osei shamayim ba'aretz al yitei lamot raglecha al yanuhum shomerecha hinei lo yanu v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha yomam hashemesh lo yakecha v'yareach b'layla Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzidcha v'lecha me'ataha ve'ad olam. Psalm 121, a song for ascents. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from evil and will guard your soul. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever.
Mizmor David, another of the Psalms of David. Adonai ro'i lo achsar bino tedeshi arbitzeni, al me menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev. Yancheni v'maglei tzedek l'man shemo, gam kelech begetz al mabed lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha emer nachamuni, taruch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai. Yishanta v'shem roshi kosi levaya. Ach tov v'chesed yidefuni ko yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai v'orech yamim. Those are the Hebrew words of the psalm that we turn to so frequently when we find ourselves walking through the valley of the shadow. It's a psalm that helps us to make that journey. And it concludes with the assurance that goodness and mercy will follow Deena, for that is the way that she lived her life. And for that reason she will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. All of you know this psalm, all of you are familiar with it. Many can recite it from memory. Recite with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
In the synagogue on Shabbat morning, we are currently reading from the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, the biblical book of beginnings. And it is right at the beginning of the Torah that we learn that when a loved one passes away, it is members of the family who come forward to share stories and memories. And it's this ancient tradition that will continue here this morning, as first we'll call upon Deena's sons, Bruce, and then Mark, and then her grandchildren, Jason, and then Josh. Bruce.
So, my mom, she was just a wonderful person. I can tell by everybody that's being here today. All right, she was a wonderful mother, okay, a wonderful wife to my father, a great friend to the community, to the synagogue, and just generally a really good person that everybody loved. It was always my mom and my dad. I mean, 63 years. It was always them together. Growing up, we remember the holidays. I mean, all the holidays. We always had our house in Stratford. It was just a wonderful time. I mean, I was calling some family members to discuss, what was going on here, and that my mother had passed, and all they could remember was the holidays that they came to. Even some cousins that from Atlanta, him and his wife, David and Deena, they were just commenting how they were just welcome at the house all the time. Okay, and they just loved the conversations, they loved the food, it was just wonderful times, and it was good family. That's what it was. Everyone enjoyed Mom's cooking, okay? It was always good, she always made the holidays, okay? It was always a good time. Always remember Mom and Dad, Mom always helping my dad no matter what, okay? Whether it was driving, okay, side seat driving, okay, she was always helping him. He never drove too fast, never. So she would always remind him, okay. She ran the office for many years, that was in the house, okay, in Stratford, okay. So she just did everything. Sometimes I remember, when she was running the office, especially the Hamilton area, people just didn't have that. Back then, didn't have all the money to get paid in fruits and vegetables. Okay, getting those pints and quarts and things coming to the house. It was a great time, especially the blueberries. They were really good. Okay. Several stories that I always like to tell, especially with my children. I remember the time that they took them to McDonald's when they were little kids. Okay, and it was 2 for $1 Big Mac. Okay, so they got 2 Big Macs for $1. Okay, they split one and the kids split one. Great stories. The kids always remember that. Okay, at the house, always donuts, bagels. Whenever we had them, they were cut in quarters, so you could try a little bit of each one. Okay, always cutting them up. Okay. Mom was always generous to a fault. Okay, with everybody. All right, she was devoted to us, her children, to her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. All right, she just was beaming when the great-grandchildren were born, and now she could tell her friends and the people at the synagogue that she was now a great-grandmother. Okay, so she was just thrilled to be able to say that. Okay. It was interesting when the great-grandchildren were born, because they're my grandchildren. We were trying to figure out how they were going to call us, and it couldn't be Bubby and Zeta, okay, because there was only one Bubby, Okay, and it was only one Zeta. All right, so we became Nana and Sala. Okay, because it just could not be a Bubby. Okay. There's only one Bubby, as we said. When Mom and Dad moved to Marlton, to Village Green, about 23 years ago, they've been there now. They got a new community. Okay, and you can see by a lot of the people here, they were part of that community. All right. I mean, when Dad was alive, he did a lot of different things there. Mom did a lot. Okay, people knew her. She'd be playing cards. She liked her mahjong. She liked her bridge. She liked her canasta. Before all this stuff started, when she went to the pool, she wouldn't necessarily get in the water, but she sat there. Okay, she enjoyed her time out at the pool, just talking. Okay, she also enjoyed her water aerobics while they had those going up, and so she really enjoyed those. Never got her hair wet. Okay, but she enjoyed the water aerobics. Mom loved life. Okay, she really did. She really did. Again, she just loved her family. Okay, she loved the community of Village Green, and she loved the cinema. Okay, the sisterhood, TBS, the gift shop, those were her life, and she enjoyed them tremendously. She enjoyed them to the very end. Okay, and that was a wonderful thing. That was a wonderful thing. She went with everybody missing her. She went with everybody there, and she really loved life.
Hi everyone, thank you. Thank you for being here. So, it's easy for me to, well, it's not easy for me to be here and talk, but, okay. So, it's easy for me to, I'd like to just tell them my favorite Shakespeare quote, which is, "Love all, trust a few, do harm to none," which is really how my mom taught me by example. She harmed nobody, and she never spoke ill of anyone. Never by word nor by her actions was she ever harmful to anyone. If she had a fault, I would say that my mother was too trusting at times. My father took my sister and my brother and I aside right before he died and said, "Take care of your mother," which of course we're going to do without a doubt. And he gave us one thing he told us: remember, she's gullible. So my mom was too trusting, but that's okay. My father made up for that. And she loved my father. They were married June 15th, 1952, and they were together from that moment on. They were childhood sweethearts, essentially, so they were really together their entire lives, and she loved my father. It was just an amazing example to see them together. My mother loved life. She very much loved the community that she was in, and as my brother said, she loved playing cards and all the different things that she did. She very much loved her Jewish faith, and she led by example to us for that. She loved Temple Beth Shalom. She was so proud of my sister for the leadership role that she took there also. She loved her, probably the thing that my mother instilled in us the most, that she very much loved her family. Her family was so important to her. I remember I just got to tell one story because I'm thinking of stories, and my brother just reminded me of the story when my father, as many of you know, he drove too fast and too close. I probably picked up that habit, but I'll never forget the time we drove out to Washington University when I was deciding on which college to go to. And then we took a ride from St. Louis up to Des Moines, where my brother was in medical school. And we were going to make the whole 21-hour drive, and we were going to each drive a section of 3 hours each. And my father drove the first section, my mother drove the second section, I drove the third section, and she never drove again because she was too busy telling my father what to do on the way home. And my parents never fought, but they did argue sometimes when they were in the car when my mother was telling him he was driving too fast, and if he got lost, of course it was her fault. But back to my mother really loved her family, and I know one of the last things she did was, the whole family was up here, and my beautiful niece Charlene, as my father would always say, had just been up, and it's a long drive, obviously, and everyone was coming, and she had already been here, and Michael was coming. My mother said, "Everyone's going to be here except for you." So she knew how to play grandmother at times. She knew how to play the grandmother card, and Charlie was here, and God, my mom just loved her family, and if she does anything, she brought us all together again. And she would love that everyone was here. Thank you.
I feel blessed to be standing here today on behalf of my mom and myself with the ability to share with all of you what an amazing woman my Bubby was. Bubby was the type of woman who we should all aspire to be like. She was surrounded by love and family more than any single person I've ever met. She started every morning with a phone call from my mom, or Bruce, or Mark, or Michael, or Charlie, or me, or Josh, or Max. And every morning, she took pride in cutting one of us off mid-sentence to announce she had to hang up on us as another family member rang in vying for her attention. She was the envy of her friends with how many phone calls she received each day from family, which she was never bashful about bragging about. The milestones of her family were what she lived for. Bubby never missed a graduation, wedding, holiday dinner, birthday, anniversary, or Valentine's Day. And if she couldn't be there in person, which she was almost every time, you were assured a card would be in your mailbox, not the day before, not the day after, but the exact day of the event, letting you know she was thinking of you. Right up until this past weekend, those milestones kept her going, as she willed herself to Josh and Becca's engagement. Not only did she make it there, she looked beautiful right out of a hospital bed. She welcomed Becca's entire family into ours. She had a glass of champagne, and she was quick to let the medical transport driver know he was taking the wrong way to get to our house from hers. The beauty of Bubby is you did not have to be family to feel her love, because if you met Bubby even just once, you were her family. She knew every friend of her children and grandchildren by name and genuinely cared about each of them, so much so a friend of my mom's recently told her that Bubby probably knew more about her than her own mother. Just a month and a half ago, she walked up to several friends of mine at our wedding, friends she had met only once at my college graduation more than 6 years ago, and addressed each of them by name and asked about their family, because that was Bubby. For my mom, she spoke with Bubby 3+ times a day. It didn't matter what the calls were about, just as long as they got to spend that time on the phone with each other. Those phone calls can never be replaced, but will be cherished forever. She felt so fortunate that while Bubby felt like a mother to so many people, she was the luckiest because she got to call Bubby her mom. She also wanted to share with all of you how amazing both Bruce and Mark were in taking care of Bubby. The three of them took care of Bubby right up until her last breath together as a team, just like Bubby and Zeta raised them to be. She was promised we'd all be there by her side until the end, and she got every grandchild, child, and great-grandchild into her house on her last day with us. That is a true testament to the love she gave to all of us. But Bubby would want all of us to be happy and celebrating her today. So I shared this story with my family yesterday, but I wanted to share it with all of you. So this is about the time that Bubby decided she wanted to take a road trip with me from New Jersey to move me to Miami. Bubby had this thing when you drove with her. She read every single sign on the side of the road that she was out loud. For reference, it is 1,208 miles from New Jersey to Miami, so as you can imagine, we passed a lot of signs. Instead of music, for 4 days, I got what Josh called the Bubby podcast. McDonald's is 4.3 miles on your right. Next rest stop, 86 miles. Pull off here for the world's largest antique shop. But there's one sign I will never, ever forget. We were on the back roads in South Carolina when we passed a sign that she read out loud that said, "Jesus will save you." To which she quickly responded to herself, "No, he won't." I'm glad everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. Bubby, we all love you and will miss you. Give Zeta a big hug from all of us. I'm so happy you two will never have to spend another day apart again.
I don't like this whole going after Jason thing. Every recipe book has its secrets. Growing up, I always wanted to know what made Bubby's meals so special. What did she do so differently than everyone else? As I learned how to cook, I often thought about our holiday meals. Until recently, I never realized each dish, a part of our tradition, embodied characteristics of Bubby. The first part of the meal, always the matzo ball soup, warm and comforting. Not a day went by where if I needed a smile, Bubby wasn't the first call. She always knew what to say and listened to any problems. Growing up, Bubby worked in the gift shop at the synagogue on Hebrew school nights just so she could see Jason and I and give us hugs. Also, a lot of cookies. She knew we were never thrilled about being in Hebrew school. Sorry, guys. But seeing her was something I always looked forward to. Next, the gefilte fish. Now, like most, I'm not really sure what it is, but somehow always seemed to hit the spot and something many look forward to. Whether it be her friends at the clubhouse, family, or friends of friends of friends, Bubby always seemed to hit the spot. Some people didn't even know what a Bubby was, but fell in love with her anyways. We went on our family cruise a few years ago, and we made shirts. They said, "Show me your Bubbies." Not everyone was sure what it meant, but like Bubby, brought a smile to everyone's face. We then get to the brisket, the meat and potatoes of the meal. Tender, flavorful, and meticulous. Bubby had the kindest of hearts. It could be easily seen by her daily stack of mail, which was equivalent to many people's weeks of mail from the amount of charitable donation asks because she gave so many organizations. Just the other day, I sat there and read her each envelope one by one, just to make sure she didn't need to give one last donation. For a few of the organizations, she said, "Ooh, they're going to miss me. I give them a lot of money." Like the preparation of the brisket, Bubby was meticulous in her list making. She had a grocery list which she gave to my mom weekly as she had done her shopping since the beginning of COVID. And she had her chores list. I don't necessarily know when this started, but when you went to Bubby's, she would always tell you had to come 15 minutes early to get through her list, which usually took about a minute or two. Put the batteries in this, change the light bulb, re-download this app, how do I get this picture? Whether you were local or visiting, there was always a task to complete. Complementing Bubby's brisket was her applesauce. Sugar, spice, and everything nice. Roughly 100 apples, countless hours, and 20 quarts later, nothing reminds me more of Bubby. You can't certainly buy that in stores. When quarantining after Jason and Rachel's wedding, last Labor Day, Rebecca and I got the enjoyment of making it with her. While I've been doing the manual labor for the last 5 to 7 years, that didn't stop Bubby from standing over my shoulder, checking in and making sure I was doing everything her way. She was right there the whole time, making sure no ingredient wasn't left out. Nothing was more adorable. And finally, or my dad wouldn't forgive me, her Jell-O mold. Sweet and strong. She was the sweetest woman in the world. She would do anything for anyone. But her greatest trait was her strength. I had the honor of spending the last week with her for hours a day. You never heard her complain. The strength she showed when we lost Zeta, to never having a bad day in quarantine, it was remarkable. The ultimate sign of her strength was certainly this past week, when she fought every day and told me every day that she would be there on Saturday for me. She was so happy to know that I was with Rebecca now. From the pictures, you could barely tell she was sick. Before Zeta passed, I used to call the house twice a day to talk to each of them. After Zeta passed, I still call twice a day. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to miss my Bubby podcast on my walk or drive to work. I'm going to miss telling you. I'm going to miss you telling me how you bragged about all of your kids and grandkids to your friends. I'm going to miss your hugs. I'm going to miss the countless tasks you asked me to complete. But most importantly, I'm going to miss the joy that you brought to me and everyone around you. I promised you the other day that we will all take care of each other, and we will. Give Zeta a big hug for me, and don't let him boss you around this time. I love you.
I wish I didn't have to follow Josh. But I want to thank Josh and Jason, and who shared Michelle's words as well, along with Mark and Bruce, for sharing all those beautiful memories and stories about Deena, which I know are just scratching the surface of the many memories and stories that we all have of Deena that we'll have a chance to share later tonight at Shiva and over the course of the days and the months to come. You know, as I was reflecting on Deena in our conversations, couldn't help but think about the Torah portion we read this Shabbat, which is Lech Lecha, which is the story of the beginning of Abraham and Sarah's journey to establish the Jewish people. And the Torah says that when they left, they took with them all of their possessions, as well as Hanefesh Ha'asu B'Haran, the souls that they had made in Haran. The Midrash teaches that this refers to the people who chose to join Abraham and Sarah on their journey. What attracted all these people? Our tradition learns many traits from Abraham and Sarah, but there are two that I think best explain what made people feel close to them, and then also describe how Deena Whitman lived her life. The first trait is chesed, kindness. Abraham and Sarah embody the kindness that we all strive to live by, and that Deena did live by. And the second is hachnasat orchim, being welcoming to all. And like Abraham and Sarah, Deena brought people close to her, so many people. Of course, it began with her beloved family, beginning with Gil, Zichrono Livracha, and watching them together as a couple was as hilarious as it was beautiful, as they spent their 64 years together as partners. And of course, her children, Bruce and Carolyn and Mark and Kate and Michelle and Scott, and her grandchildren, Michael and Nicole, Charlie and Stephen, Jason and Rachel, Josh and Rebecca and Max. And we know that she was thrilled to become a great-grandmother to Evelyn and Zachary, and also her brother Sydney. But in addition to her family, there are so many friends from childhood, from Stratford and Village Green, from TBS, and from so many other places. What was said about Abraham and Sarah, we can certainly say about Deena too. She was kind. She lived with chesed. She remembered birthdays, phone numbers, anniversaries, and she always sent a card. She was a warm and welcoming person who lived by the teaching from Pirkei Avot, greet every person with a cheerful face. Deena's smile is something that I'll remember most. It always lit up the room and made people feel at ease and brought them close. And it is because of how Deena lived that we'll all remember her as a blessing in our lives. Deena grew up in central Philadelphia with her parents, Celia and Max, and her brother Sidney. Her parents had a candy store and a luncheonette, and the family lived above it. Every night, Deena said, her parents brought them to the store to eat ice cream before bedtime. She went to Girls High, and there she won the contest for the most beautiful girl in the school. And perhaps this has something to do with how she met Gil. Mark alluded to the story. Let me fill it in a little bit more. Deena was swimming at the YMHA, and a guy called Giddy, which was Gil's nickname, of course, was following her around. Eventually, Gil went up to her and told her, "I don't know how to swim. Could you teach me?" She agreed, and remarkably, within a few minutes, Gil was an expert swimmer. Deena was 16 and Gil was 17. They went to each other's proms, and then, after a 5-year courtship, were married on June 15, 1952. For 64 years, they built a life together, a family together, and shared so many wonderful moments together. Like Abraham and Sarah, they shared their love and joy with others, and this made their journey and our journey more meaningful. Deena taught while Gil went to school. They lived with their parents for the first 7 years of marriage. Bruce was born, and then Mark and Michelle. And the family moved to Stratford and joined TBS and made many lifelong friends. The Levys, the Herrings, the Fines, the Bikes, the Lavins, and many others. And as Bruce said, there were many family gatherings. Deena always loved hosting everyone at their home for holidays, and there was the delicious dishes she made, as Josh shared with us the menu that she cooked. And as he brightly said, food is love, and those ingredients are also ingredients that made Deena who she was. Bruce also remembered trips to Atlantic City, where Deena liked to people watch, and Michelle added that her mom sat through many softball games when Michelle sat on the bench. But that did not deter Deena. She loved being there. And Michelle also said how an old friend remarked that Deena's kindness made her a mother to everyone. She always made everyone smile and feel welcome. And Deena especially did this as her family grew. Scott said the first time that he met Deena and Gil was when he sat behind them at a wedding. After the ceremony, they stalked him. Those are Scott's words. Because they wanted to set him up with Michelle, which they did. And it's not often that a setup from parents for a daughter works out so well, but this one has gone pretty well so far, I'd say. Scott also said that Deena always made him feel like a part of the family, and they became very, very close. And she would often stick up for Scott to Michelle, something that he always really appreciated.
That I'm good at this.
And Carolyn said that what she remembers most about the first time she met Deena was Deena's smile and her beautiful, warm welcome. It put her at ease right away. And she also commented on how beautiful and put together Deena always was, which was true. She was always meticulous about her appearance, and always looked her best. And of course, Deena was truly thrilled to become a bubby, and a great bubby. She was so proud of all of her grandchildren, and as we heard from Jason and Josh, and we know from all of them that they adored her. They each had their own special relationship with their bubby and had regular, even daily conversations. And many of them listened to that bubby podcast that Josh referred to. Max said that he liked to call his bubby the family oracle, because she knew what was going on with everyone. And Charlie added that if he told her something was a secret, then she would keep it a secret. But if he did not specify it was a secret, then everyone would know. Which I can attest to, what she told me all about Josh's upcoming proposal. Saw her the week before.
Which you knew was a secret.
Which you know is a secret, and I'm honored for this special dispensation. Deena was very present in the lives of her grandchildren. She loved going to milestone events and being with them and spending time with them and trips with them. It really is beautiful to see her with her grandchildren. And she also liked to show her love by getting gifts for everyone. And often they received the same things. Often it was kitchen gadgets like a strawberry top remover and other unique things she saw on TV that just showed up at their doors. And Deena also sent those cards for everyone's birthday. Nicole even got one for hers on October 2nd. And she also sent cards on Valentine's Day as well, which just reminded everyone how much she loved them. Deena's kind thoughtfulness helped to bring and to keep everyone close. And this, of course, was the case for her family and also for her friends, really wherever she went. Deena worked in Gil's office as the office manager for years and helped make his patients feel comfortable. She also loved participating in the activities at Village Green. Max and the rest of the grandkids recalled many clubhouse parties that Deena proudly brought them to show them off. She was also involved in B'nai B'rith and Hadassah and regular Mahjong and Bridge and Knesset games and, of course, at Temple Beth Shalom. Deena and Gil joined TBS in August of 1965. I know because I found their welcome letter from Rabbi Lewis in the family file, which also includes some pretty interesting Hebrew School report cards and some other notes that Michelle can share with you later if she wants. But we know that TBS was an important part of Deena's life and the whole family's life. And she and Gil, of course, always will be an important part of our community. Deena was a regular at Shabbat services and sisterhood programs and many of our programs before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, she became a regular on Zoom, which she usually used pretty well. She especially enjoyed seeing everyone at Jason and Rachel's virtual Ofruf that we got to celebrate together. And as Josh mentioned, she worked in the gift shop for many years, and she liked to see Jason and Josh during religious school, which I thought you liked my classes, but we can talk about that later too. It's in the file. Deena was also, as was said, very generous in giving tzedakah to many organizations, and especially to TBS, which greatly helped us as a community. Her generosity was also a real blessing. But we know that Deena's greatest blessing was all of you, her family. And when I sat with her last week and we talked and reflected, she kept coming back to how lucky she felt to have such a beautiful and supportive family. Michelle, you recalled how your grandmother, Deena's mom, lived with you and how Deena took such wonderful care of her. And we know that this set a wonderful example for you, as all of you helped take care of her, gave her advice, drove her to doctor's appointments, did shopping, cooked for her, and helped her with whatever she needed. Deena was so happy and proud when her grandkids got married, when she became a great-grandmother. Jason and Rachel, I can't tell you how much I heard about how excited she was for your wedding last Labor Day and then for the celebration in August. She knew her diagnosis, of course, and looking forward to that helped keep her going. And then, as her health declined, Josh, you were able to pull everyone together as only you could to come to Michelle and Scott's home on last Saturday night, where you could propose to Rebecca and Deena, and all of you could be a part of that beautiful celebration in her final days. And what an incredible way to spend your final days, surrounded by family, smiling, celebrating. It's been an emotional roller coaster these last few days, I know, but I can't think of a greater blessing than being able to spend them as Deena did. Abraham and Sarah's kindness and warmth proved to be the foundation for our people. And Deena's kindness and warmth are the foundation of her relationships with her family, her friends, and her community. And it is because of this we know that Deena's memory will continue to inspire us to live as she did. And that's how we know that her memory will always be for a blessing. We rise for a final prayer.
El Malrachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kidoshim Otorim, Kizora Rakiha, Masirim, Et Nishmat, Deena Bat Matul B'tzina, Shehalacha V'yalama, B'gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Hana, Balarachamim, Hastira B'seiter Knafecha V'yolamim, Utzrur B'tzur HaChaim, Et Nishmata, Adonai Hunachalata, B'tanuach, B'shalom al Mishkava, B'nomar, Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, through the soul of Deena Whitman, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. From here, we'll head to Mount Jacob Cemetery for the burial. This evening, there'll be a Shiva Minyan at the sanctuary at TBS at 7 p.m. Vaccinations and masks are required for the Shiva Minyan. It will be in the sanctuary at 7. It will also be live streamed at tbsonline.org/livestream as well for those who'd like to join us virtually.
At the pallbearers, please. Yes, get your right once more, please. כל זמן ובכל חפץ תחת השמיים, עת ללדת ועת למות, עת לטעת ועת לכל נטוע, עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות.
A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time for planting and a time for uprooting. A time for hurting and a time for healing. A time for tearing down and a time for building up.
עת לבכות ועת לשחוט, עת צפות ועת רקוד, עת להשליך אבנים ועת כנוס אבנים, עת לחוות ועת ברכות מכבד.
A time for weeping and a time for laughing. A time for crying and a time for dancing. A time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones. A time for embracing and a time for shunning embraces.
עת לבקש ועת לאבד, עת לשמור ועת להשליך, עת לקרוא ועת לתפור, עת לחשות ועת לדבר.
A time for seeking and a time for losing. A time for keeping and a time for letting go. A time for ripping and a time for sowing. A time for speaking and a time for silence.
Please be seated and remain seated.